Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a vintage StarCraft episode. This is number 5, if I remember correctly. We've jumped ahead just a small amount in our little timeline of StarCraft 2 Wings of Liberty. We've gone ahead from the last episode of vintage StarCraft, which was August 29 of 2010. We're now up to, I believe this replay was around about the 10th of September 2010. So things have progressed just a little bit, not too much. I doubt too much has changed in terms of the metagame from the previous replay we had to this one, but we'll see how it goes, because we do have two players from the North American, well, I guess mostly the North American scene, who did a really good job respectively back in their day, and of course one of these players is still around to this day and still does a wonderful job leading the Root Gaming team, among many other things he does. Over on the right hand side of Metalopolis is our Zerg player, Catz. And so, bear in mind, guys, actually, we'll do that in a second. We'll do housekeeping in a second. I always get that wrong. Of course, Catz is a player who's been around for a very long time. Used to play a little bit of Brood War, played quite a bit of 2v2 with Drewby, and those two guys carried that over into StarCraft 2 as well, and did quite well with their 2v2 action. Of course, Catz known generally for playing a little bit more unconventionally than most Zerg players would. We talk about proxies, we talk about weird kind of compositions and this kind of stuff, and other sorts of things that you don't tend to see too often. We'll see if he's going to go for something like that this time, but he is going to be scouting quickly down to the southern side of the map, because we'll talk about Metalopolis shortly, just because there are some interesting eccentricities about this map. But Catz is going to open up with a hatch first, grabs a pool as well, and we'll see what his opponent is up to over on the left-hand side of the map as our Blue Protoss play. This was played on ladder, it wasn't part of a tournament or anything like that. Is one of Canada's Protoss players who was a decent player, but unfortunately had his teams he sort of left a couple of teams. He was part of Fnatic and then part of Mouse Sports, I believe, and then also joined Light Esports when they were around, but of course that particular team disbanded. It is AF Nige? Okay, we call him JF. JF is the more well-known name for this player. Jian Fei, and it's of course his name backwards is Jian Fei. But yeah, he's a Canadian Protoss player. I don't think he plays anymore. I'm not too sure. I think after Light disbanded, he kind of just he went and did something else. I wasn't too sure. I did a little bit of research, and unfortunately Wikipedia wasn't too helpful with JF. But he's going to be starting over here on the left-hand side as our Blue Protoss. Of course, he was a player who I think he also played a little bit of Brood War as well, and then came across into Wings of Liberty, and obviously stuck around for a little while, being in the likes of Fnatic and Mouse, and then of course Light for a tiny little bit of time. But he's going to come across with some early aggression on this map. Catz should be okay, because the Queen's about to pop out. Yeah, chucks an eject in. The Zealot will probably back off. Despite only being one Queen, you can't really do too much with just a single Zealot and the probe there. So Catz, he's found his opponent. We were talking about, actually, we'll just have a quick look at this fight before we continue on talking about the map. But as we can see, the Zealot's going to come in. He's going to try and grab at least one drone here. Gets one. Probe's going to die. And I mean, that's not too bad. I probably wouldn't have gone that far, but either way, he's come in. He's had a quick little check of what's going on inside the main base here. Catz is now going to grab his gas. But Metalopolis, pretty much one of the first initial maps that was ever in StarCraft 2, along the likes of, you know, Coolhouse Ravine, Steps of War, Blistering Sand, blah blah blah. You guys all know the maps, and if you don't, then, you know, you'll get to see them if you watch through all the vintage StarCraft episodes, because I am trying to include all of the interesting maps that are here. But it's a relatively small map. We do see, interestingly, that JF is going to be opening up with air weapons level 1, which we'll talk about in just a second here, but a very interesting strategy coming out of our Canadian Protoss here. But Metalopolis was a map where you might have a look. I can't... Oh God, it's so weird doing this, because I don't have any of the cool, fun tools that I have to cast normal stuff, so I can't even use SC2 Tactician to draw stuff on the screen for you guys. But basically, this map is very small. As you can see, this base down at the southern side, you could actually spawn here. There was close ground positions on this map for quite a time. They eventually removed it so that there was no close ground spots here, because as you can imagine, if you were Catz and your Protoss opponent is right here, that's a very, very short distance to come across from, and this is why we got to see a lot of players would either veto this map or just try and cheese this map if there was if those kinds of positions were set up. Also, you can spawn, I guess, sort of vertically like this. So for Zerg players, that was quite nice to get an Overlord across there and be able to quickly peek into your opponent's base. And of course, we've got these cross spots. But interestingly, in the middle, we do have two gold bases that basically face each other. There are two Xel'Naga watchtowers across to the side, which kind of, this was part of Blizzard's early, I guess their early sort of processing thoughts about how the maps would play out, is that, you know, the Xel'Naga towers would cover just about everything, because this is all. These are the only two ground attack paths. This one here, this highway here, and then the other one across to the side. So it wasn't exactly you know, easy to navigate around the map if your opponent had control of the watchtowers, because you'd see everything unless it was in the air. Another little small feature about this map was that there is the gas inside the back of your base, which is why we see the JF has placed a pylon down here. Doesn't want any sneaky Nidus worms coming in down the back. We're a little bit surprised that Catz doesn't actually have an Overlord keeping an eye on this position here. A lot of the time, what we did get to see on this map through its entire time in Wings of Liberty was that it was common for people to try and warp stuff in there, or drop in there, or Nidus worm, as we said. So it was quite a little contentious spot. But let's just quickly also talk about the build that JF has gone for. He did go for early +1 weapons on his air units, which is quite an odd strategy for this this kind of situation. In fact, you would call this odd, I guess, to this day. Is that rarely ever would you see a Protoss go +1 air weapons, but it did allow him to do a lot of damage with his Phoenix. He's killed off a couple of Overlords. There are some random Overlords strewn about the map. He's forced Catz to grab a couple of Spore Crawlers, because otherwise his Queens are going to be in quite a lot of trouble. As you can see, the Phoenix able to quickly take these down, and I mean, Catz is going to have to get out some, yeah, he's getting some Hydras out. We've got a couple of upgrades on the way as well, +1 to missile weapons, and also to Carapace as well. But Catz having to get out quite a few Queens to be able to deal with this threat, and also get these Hydras, which back in the day isn't exactly something that you really wanted to do straight away. Hydras were not as powerful as they were before. Of course, they didn't have the muscular augments upgrade. That didn't come along until part of the Swarm, and you know, it just kind of meant that these guys are very, very slow. They're easily susceptible to being sniped off. As you can see, even the Phoenix would have been just purely able to deal with the Hydras at that count. So you have to be really careful as a Zerg player when utilizing the Hydras at the start of the game. But as you can see, Catz still struggling to take a third base. The other option for the third is down here at the sort of the 5 o'clock position. There is another one over here at 6 as well that he could take, but that does start to get a little bit risky because it's quite far away. But JF, well, we were talking about taking the natural as well, and I mean, you may look at this and you think, wow, how exactly do you wall this off? There's a lot of space across here. There's this area just across the left-hand side as well, which is quite exposed. Well, generally what people were doing when people started sort of figuring this one out, was you would wall sort of across that way. If you can sort of imagine, you know, a forge, a gateway, or something like that. But JF has just decided, because he opened up in quite a different style with this sort of mass Phoenix play, that he was just going to throw down a couple of cannons at the front to make sure that he was okay. And, you know, it's done quite well. His Phoenix have kept his opponent across the map. It's very similar to how Mutalisks play out in certain matchups as well. Mutas just try and keep your opponent back while you get a lot of economy or tech going up back at home. But JF can no longer engage this pack of units. The Hydras have got their 1-1, so they will do a lot of damage, and the Queens are here as well to provide some small-scale support. So Catz should be okay to set up his third base. He does have another hatchery down here at the 5 o'clock position, which is going to get set up. The gold is also just on the way as well. It looks like he really wants to get this gold base off. This was always a base that was very... it's always very risky to take. As you can see, there are so many paths to come in here. Your opponent is almost always going to see you because of the Xel'Naga watchtowers if they're diligent in holding those, and it just sort of meant that this base was quite difficult to take. But Catz is no doubt going to go for that and try and get that one up and running. The JF is going to see that we do have... Wait, is he really going to go for eggs? It takes a long time to kill eggs. Yeah. eggs are kind of like what they were in in Brood War where they have like 200 armor or something like that. So it's very rare to see a unit that has this light damage that the Phoenix have to kill off an egg. But JF is going to come through. A couple of Spore Crawlers here, able to try and defend that drone line there. But Catz losing a couple of his workers. We, again, just because of the fact that we're in old Wings of Liberty, guys, I don't have access to all the same tools that you normally have. So some things are missing, and I know that's quite frustrating to deal with. You've got no, I don't think the name tags, no, not even the name tags are active up the top of the screen there back in the day, so I can't even put that up for you. You can only see, you know, one of the players' resources and supply counts, which is a little bit unfortunate, and as you can see, work account, I have to manually bring that up, which I'm very much not used to. But JF has taken his time to secure the map as best as he can. We've got a couple of cannons coming up. The Nexus is going to be completing soon at the gold base, but Catz now has his own gold base as well. Just the big issue here for JF is that he has to be careful about this gold. When you take this position on this map and then you don't have a fallback base, like you don't have this base secured, it means that if you lose this one, you can be in a lot of trouble, especially as a Protoss, because if you lose the expensive units, the Colossus, and any other high-end units that you purchase, you'll be in a lot of trouble if they die off, because you won't have that third base economy to keep them pumping out, as you normally would. So Catz has done an excellent job of getting this base saturated. I'm a little bit surprised he hasn't sort of spent just one unit to try and take up the Zelnaga watchtowers or anything like that. You know, he knows that the gold base is up and running for JF, but it looks like we are going to have a weird kind of base trade here with the Hydras and Roaches now moving up through the top of the map. They will have their +2 to their weapons very soon. The +2 to armor is already done. But, well, we've done a little bit of a, I guess, a merry-go-round here, because they've kind of both rotated around. Catz is going to try and get out of there with all of his drones. He's definitely going to lose that hatchery. But he's also going to take a gold base from the Protoss. And as we said before, this is a little bit of an ugly thing for JF in a way, just because he has much more expensive units without his own third base. He's not going to be able to easily replenish any of these units. He loses here in the battle, but we'll see what happens, because of course this is early Wings of Liberty when people generally sort of stayed on 2 to 3 bases and never went higher. But yeah, wow, great force fields there from JF, just cutting off the majority of the units. These Hydras need to get out of there, but this is a problem that we see with these units, is that they are extremely slow to get out of there. So Catz says, screw that, I'm going to turn around, I'm going to try and fight some of these Colossi, and we see that the Colossi do actually fall down, quite a few of them tipping over and falling down there. I'll just put the hit bars on for you for a second so you can see what's going on. Roaches come in from the back as well, and they are going to try and take out a couple more of the Colossi, but the Phoenix helping out with their lifts, and they are going to be able to keep the Colossi alive for the most part. One falls down. We can see the Roaches and Hydra still coming across, trying to get some more damage done, but it's not going to be enough. But as we can see, JF keeping a few of his higher end units up and running here. The 4 Colossus that are still alive is pretty good to have, and it means that he'll still have a lot of AoE firepower to utilize against Catz, who's now, he's going to have to, where is his, we don't actually have a macro hatch for Catz at all. He's sort of floating up at around about 1,000 minerals, so doesn't actually have that extra capability to produce units a little bit quicker, unfortunately, which is going to limit his production right now. We can see that there's only 7 Hydras on the way. We've busted out a few Roaches, and some Lings are also coming through as well, but will it be enough? Force field's coming across from JF is a little bit too late there. Colossus getting a little bit low just at the back there. Whoa, very, very low health. If Catz can target that one down, he'd love to pick that one off, but charge lots now coming through. We can see that the Phoenix are actually starting to lose their grip here. They have started to fall down their numbers. The Hydras are going to tear them apart. Force fields will hold Catz back for a little bit, but he has torn apart most of this Protoss army, and we can really see the effect of the Zerg player having the backup base there. He lost the gold, but Catz was able to replenish some of his supply before he engaged that in that fight. And for JF, well, he's now going to be struggling a little bit because his main base is pretty much mined out. The natural is getting quite low as well. We can see a bajillion probes here at the natural base, which is no good for him. And with the gold only now just establishing, JF is he's going to have quite a task on his hands to just sort of keep things in line for himself here. He needs to sort of keep his units balled up. As you can see, he's sitting on around about sort of 500 minerals at the moment, but needs to make sure that this gold base gets up and running, because if he can't get it, then it's pretty much lights out for him. So Catz doing a good job despite some early harassment. We can see that his +1 to melee attacks is on the way. Also have an Ultralisk Cavern in production here, which is quite intriguing. You may have been thinking when we were starting up this game, where are the Broodlords and the Infestors? Well, this was still quite a while before the Dark Ages, as it may have been known, of Broodlord Infestor being played out. So there's still... I'm pretty sure, don't quote me on that, I'm pretty sure it was just a little bit before that started occurring. But Catz is going to, either way it's Catz, you know, you could expect that there could be some Ultralists coming out anyway, given that they were a little bit of a, I guess, a messy unit back in the day. But we'll see what happens. He's got the Ultralisk Cavern now done. Corruptors are finally making their way out on the field, despite dealing with Colossi for, well, the last 10 minutes or so. Catz is now finally going to grab a couple of the Sentinels of the Sky and is going to be coming across with those guys to try and help out against the 4 Colossi that are still out on the field for JF. So Catz is now starting to really establish a good grip on this game right now. He has a small force of units just putting some pressure on across the map, and he is going to soak up a little bit of damage here, but unfortunately doesn't really trade that well for it. You wouldn't really expect a small guerrilla force of roaches and hydras to really do too much at that stage. But either way, he's occupied JF for a little while. It's bought Catz some time to get those Ultralists started. 4 on the way. We do have that +1 to melee attacks done. 2-2 is done for the ranged and carapace as well, just bearing that in mind. And now with some Corruptors out, I should say, we'll see how Catz can defend this, because the Hydras are going to get torn apart. He needs to keep them at the back. The Corruptors can come forward to try and target down the Colossi. He's doing exactly that. One of the Corruptors throws down a little bit of corruption here, trying to target down that first Colossi at the front. It's now stuck. It's being blocked down, and it finally does go down. The Ultras, however, are on the way, and they are now going to start plotting out of the bases very soon. In fact, there you go. Some of them are just grouped up down here. Catz just perhaps a little bit offbeat with some of his unit grouping and things like that, but he's still got this base down here. He'll probably look to take a 4th down towards the southern side of the map. In fact, that's what he's doing right now, as he prepares the Ultralisks and gets some tech coming up for them as well. The chitinous plating being researched, but JF, well, he's still certainly in this. He's got the gold base. He's mining from this rather efficiently, perhaps too efficiently, you would say. Needs to perhaps look at getting up another Nexus down the back here, because again, if he loses his gold base, it's all over Red Rover. So he needs to be very careful about this kind of thing. But JF now pushing forwards, has a very decent ground force here. Stalkers, Sentries, and of course the Colossi with their +2 on their weapons, but no other upgrades for them. +3 is being researched just as we speak, and we'll see how much effect that has, as the Ultras are now going to start to barrel their way forwards across the creep. Here they come, now charging into the gold base position here. Wings surrounding at the back, just trying to get on top of the Colossi to occupy their laser beams, but the Ultras at the front are the ones doing the heavy damage here, charging forwards and taking down some of the Colossus. They have 4-1 on their upgrades. Of course, keep in mind, this is back in the day when the Ultras had the Ram attack, which is they don't throw goats at you, they throw a big 80 damage attack that does that can only be used on structures, but it's still certainly a huge amount of damage. So they will be out there in force trying to make sure that the Protoss is not able to amass a large force of units here. But well, we can see the JF is going to try and counter that. Gets out some Immortals, double Immortal production, given that he has had these double robots for quite a long time. A Dark Shrine is also on the way, a nice way to try and help deal with the Ultralists. But Catz is sitting up here at 151 supply. JF currently sitting at 102, so he's a little bit behind at the moment. And we'll see. It will be very dependent on if these Immortals can target down the Ultras there. One of them gets around, a great surround from Catz here. The Ultras just trying to move forwards and take down. Look at this. Look at these guys. Hang on. Let me move that. Look at this. Just bam. Just whacking through those cannons there. And, well, Catz has just decided to bypass the gold base. He said, you know what, you can have that base if I can charge through here, take out the natural base and get rid of some of this small amount of mining that's left over here, then you're already in trouble. And the Overlords, well, they wanted to keep a peek on what's going on inside the gold base, but Catz, I still think throwing up another hatchery down at the southern edge of the map is a good idea. The gold's nice to have, but I mean, it's kind of at this point where he should be throwing down some extra hatcheries. But either way, he's starting to take a pretty firm grip on this game. He's at 122 supply. JF is at 68, so he's obviously half the supply right now, which is no good for him. Corruptors roaming about, just keeping an eye on the city skies here. As we can see that with Catz now taking the gold, he's going to be in a fantastic position. His economy is going to start to really beef up here. DTs are now starting to hack away at some of the leftover Zerg units that are across the map, and we saw a DT get into the gold as well, just starting to take apart some of the drones there, but doesn't really matter at this stage. 59 drones around on the map. We've got an overseer here to provide some detection. Hydra to take care of that last DT that was harassing there, and for JF, this is a point where it does start to get a little bit difficult. And now, here we go. Broodlords are on the way. As Catz has beefed up his Spire. Got that greatest Spire rolling right now. And we are ready to go with some Broodlords. And I mean, for JF, it's his last roll of the dice right here. Unfortunately, he doesn't have enough damage, especially anti-air, to take care of the rest of his force. And while he may win the battle on the ground, he's not going to win the war, as the Broodlords start to go to town, dropping down the little broodlings, and they do their work, nibbling through the Protoss shields, the armor, and then of course the Protoss inside. GG from JF. What a great game between these two players. Hope you've all enjoyed a little bit of vintage StarCraft action, and make sure you check out the other episodes here on the channel. Just go to like my channel page and just search for vintage, and then you'll find the other ones that are there. We've got some really cool games, and I'll try and make sure that we keep these coming. Thanks guys, see you later. Of course, if they get fungal, then you're in trouble town, population top. And, you know, as he looks to build up his some of his extra little production facilities here, such as the extra command centers, we've got medevacs and Vikings now starting to pop out.